The first thing I noticed wasn't her face. It was the sound of her laugh, low, warm, and slightly tired, like someone who'd learned how to hold back too much for too long. I was crouched beside the bed, tightening the last bolt of the frame she'd asked me to fix, when that laugh floated over my shoulder. "Careful," she said. "That thing's older than both of us." She wasn't wrong. The frame creaked like it was remembering something. I looked up. She was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed loosely, the sleeve of her sweater half pushed up. There was paint on her wrist, white, dry in a thin line, the kind that told you she tried to do something herself, given up, and then pretended she hadn't. Her hair fell in soft, uneven waves, tied up and half falling loose. She had that kind of calm that makes silence heavy. "I tightened everything," I said, running my hand along the edge of the wood. "Shouldn't move now." "Shouldn't," she repeated, a little smile in her voice. She walked closer, slow. I caught the faint scent of coffee, maybe something floral under it. The kind of detail you don't mean to notice, but can't unnotice once you do. When she knelt beside me to look at the screws, the space between us shrank to almost nothing. Her shoulder brushed mine, once, then again, lighter than before. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. "You do this kind of thing often?" she asked. Her tone was polite, but there was something else in it, something like curiosity wrapped in distance. "Fixing things," I said. "Sometimes. Not usually for people I barely know." "Barely," she repeated, and I wasn't sure if she was teasing or testing. There was a small pause, one of those that stretches too long. Her gaze stayed on the bed, but her hand rested briefly on my wrist, soft, deliberate. Just a moment, maybe 2 seconds, then gone. Still, my pulse shifted. The whole room seemed to tilt slightly toward that touch. "Strong enough?" she asked. I pressed down on the frame. It didn't move. Seemed solid. Her eyes lifted to mine, then slow, steady. "Then," she said, her voice quiet but certain, "you should test if it's strong enough." I didn't understand at first, or maybe I did and didn't want to. The way she looked at me wasn't playful. It was something else, like she was waiting to see whether I'd cross some invisible line, or if she'd have to. The air thickened. My hand hovered above the wood, unsure of where to rest. She took a step back, giving me room, but not enough to breathe easily. I stood. The height difference made her tilt her chin slightly up, and I saw the small line near her mouth twitch, like she wanted to smile, but couldn't justify it. Her fingers traced the edge of the frame absently, almost the way one might stroke a thought they didn't want to admit. "I should, check the bolts again," I said. My voice came out thinner than I meant. "Of course," she murmured. "You should always make sure everything's tight." She turned away then, moving toward the kitchen. The click of her footsteps faded down the hall, but the scent of her coffee, paint, and something quiet stayed behind. Then, just as I exhaled, a door somewhere in the house creaked open. I froze. Her voice came from the hall, softer this time, almost like she was speaking to herself. "I wasn't expecting you this early." And then another voice, a man's, answered, too low for me to catch. The wrench slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a sharp metallic sound that seemed far too loud for that quiet room. The man's voice from the hallway had been brief, a few words, muffled, then the sound of the door shutting again. When she returned, she didn't explain, and I didn't ask. Some things felt like trespassing even to wonder about. She picked up the wrench I dropped and set on the nightstand. "You don't have to finish today," she said. "It's late. It's barely 6. Her lips curved faintly. "Then maybe I just meant you look tired." That night, I didn't sleep much. The scent of her house lingered on my hands, paint, old wood, faintly of her perfume. I kept thinking of how her voice dropped when she spoke to me, quieter than it needed to be. The next day, she called again. Something about a loose hinge this time. When I arrived, she was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by books and half-open boxes. "I'm trying to make this place feel like mine," she said. "It still feels like someone else's." Her tone carried the weight of years she wasn't naming. I knelt beside the cabinet, pretending to study the hinge. "You just move in." She shook her head. "Moved out. I'm still getting used to empty rooms." I didn't know what to say, so I focused on the screw in front of me. The silence between us felt almost alive, fragile, but impossible to break without saying too much. When I looked up, she was watching me, her expression softened by something halfway between curiosity and caution. "How old are you again?" she asked, as if she already knew. 26. She nodded slowly, eyes dropping to her hands. "That explains it." "Explains what?" "Why you still look at people like you might trust them." The corner of her mouth lifted, but her voice cracked slightly at the end. She looked down, pretending to fix the stack of books beside her. I wanted to ask what had happened to make her sound like that, but the question sat in my throat and never made it out. Her hand brushed my shoulder as she reached for a screwdriver, staying there a second too long. Not enough to mean something, but enough to make me notice. I caught myself watching the way a strand of her hair fell forward as she leaned in, how it brushed the side of her neck, the faint pulse there. I looked away before she turned her head, but she noticed anyway. "You get quiet when you're thinking," she said. "Maybe I just don't want to say the wrong thing." She smiled then, a small, knowing curve. "There's no right thing, either." The afternoon light was starting to fade, falling soft across her face. Dust motes hung between us like tiny things suspended in indecision. She handed me a cup of coffee, fingers grazing mine, deliberate this time. "For the effort," she said. "Thanks." We sat in silence. Somewhere outside, wind pressed against the window, and her knee brushed mine, barely, but enough to send a tremor through the stillness. Neither of us moved away. It started raining that afternoon. Not a storm, just the kind that made everything sound softer. She'd texted me, "The window's leaking again. Can you stop by?" When I got there, she was barefoot, standing on a towel near the kitchen window, hair pulled back loosely. A small drop of water slid down her wrist as she pointed toward the frame. "It's stubborn," she said, smiling faintly. "Like me." I crouched, checking the seal, but I could feel her standing too close behind me, close enough that her breath stirred the air by my ear. When I turned, she didn't move back. "I thought you'd be busy," I said quietly. "I was." She hesitated. "But I like when you fix things. It makes the house feel less empty." She said it like a confession. Her phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. She looked at it, then pressed the screen face down without answering. The silence afterward felt heavier than the rain outside. "Someone waiting for you?" I asked. She met my eyes, long enough for the answer to be obvious. "Not anymore." Her voice carried something fragile. Regret, maybe. I wasn't sure. She turned away, wiping her hands on her jeans, but her movements were slow, distracted. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat tightened. I reached up to test the seal again. The window gave a faint creak. "Still leaking," I murmured. "Then stay until it stops," she said, almost under her breath. I looked over my shoulder. She was leaning against the counter, arms folded, watching me with that calm that wasn't really calm. When I stood, we were too close. The faint scent of her shampoo, cedar, maybe jasmine, caught between us. I could see the soft line of her collarbone, the steady rise and fall of her breathing. For a second, neither of us moved. Her hand came up as if to fix the edge of my shirt, but stayed there, barely touching. "You always look like you're about to say something," she whispered. "I'm not sure I should." "Then don't," she said, but her tone didn't sound like she meant it. The air pulsed with everything we weren't saying. I took half a step forward without thinking. She didn't retreat, just closed her eyes for a heartbeat, as if bracing for something that didn't happen. Then the knock came. We both jumped. Her friend's voice called from the porch, cheerful, too loud for the quiet we'd built. "You home?" She exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. "God." I grabbed my jacket, ready to move, but she caught my wrist, quick, desperate. "Wait." Her eyes searched mine, wide and unguarded for the first time. "Don't go yet." The knock came again, sharper this time. She let go, just barely, but her fingers dragged against my skin as she turned toward the door. And in that touch, brief as it was, I felt everything she couldn't say aloud. It was late when I stopped by again. She'd said the window still leaked, but I think both of us knew that wasn't the reason. The rain had stopped hours ago. The sky was clear. She opened the door in silence. No smile this time, just a tired look that didn't match her voice when she said, You came. You asked. Inside, the lights were dim. One lamp by the couch, warm and uneven. The smell of wine and something floral hung in the air. Her bare feet brushed softly against the rug as she moved. I didn't think you would, she said after a long pause. After yesterday, I almost didn't. But you did. She stood by the window, one hand resting on the frame, and looked out into the dark. He came by again, she said quietly. The one from before. The air shifted. Is he? No, she turned. He was. Once. Her eyes glimmered faintly in the half-light. You shouldn't look at me the way you do. I can't help it. She let out a breath, sharp, small. Don't say things like that. I stepped closer. Why not? Because they make it harder to pretend. Her hand was trembling slightly on the window latch. I reached up without thinking, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her skin, warm, impossibly soft, and she froze, eyes lifting to meet mine. Neither of us spoke. Her breath caught, shallow. You shouldn't, I know, but neither of us moved away. Her pulse fluttered against my wrist where I still touched her. The space between us shrank until I could feel the faint warmth of her body, the brush of her sleeve against my arm. She tilted her head, just slightly, as if the air between us had turned into something we could step through if one of us dared. People would talk, she murmured. Let them. Easy for you to say. Her voice cracked. You still have time for mistakes. I didn't answer. I just watched the way her lips parted, the faint tremor there. I could taste the tension, the mix of fear and wanting that neither of us had asked for. She looked down, then back up. If we do this, she whispered, it changes everything. I swallowed. Maybe everything already changed. Her eyes searched mine, not for permission, but for courage. Then her hand came up, pressing lightly against my chest, not to stop me, but to steady herself. For a long, endless second, we stood like that, hearts stuttering, breaths sinking. Her face tilted closer, the soft brush of her hair against my cheek, her voice barely audible, don't make me want this. I think you already do. The sound of the front door latch turning shattered the moment. We froze. A shadow moved across the hallway, a man's voice calling her name. Familiar, casual, devastating. She stepped back, lips parted, eyes wide. Everything that almost happened hung between us, trembling like glass. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back. But by evening, I was standing outside her house again. Same porch light flickering, same quiet weight pressing through the door. I told myself I was just going to return the wrench I'd borrowed. That was the lie I clung to. When she opened the door, she looked startled, not unhappy, but unready. Her phone was in her hand, the screen still lit with a message I wasn't meant to see. A name. His name. She turned the phone face down on the table like she had the first time. He called. I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up. You read that. I saw it. She didn't deny it. He's my husband, she said quietly. Not anymore. But legally, yes. The words landed hard, heavier than I expected. I didn't answer right away. My pulse quickened, heat rising where shame should have been. He doesn't live here, she went on. Not really. Just stops by. Checks in. Pretends he still has a say. Her voice was calm, but her fingers trembled as she poured wine into 2 glasses, one overflowing slightly before she noticed. She handed me one, not meeting my gaze. So that's what this is? I asked softly. Something to keep him away. Her shoulders tightened. Don't make it small. I'm not, I said. I don't want to be a reason you regret something. She turned toward me then, close enough that the edge of her sweater brushed my arm. You think I haven't already? Her words weren't cruel. They were tired. Honest. The air between us pulsed again. The familiar rhythm of wanting and restraint. I set the glass down. Then tell me to stop coming here. She looked up at me, really looked this time, and something shifted in her eyes. A mix of defiance and need. If I say it, she whispered, you'll actually stop. Maybe. Her breath caught. Then I can't. We stood in silence, the sound of the clock ticking somewhere behind us. Her hand brushed past mine as she reached for a glass, but instead of taking it, she left her fingers there, grazing the side of my hand, then curling slightly, like she'd realized too late she didn't want to let go. "Does he know you're here?" she asked. "No good." She exhaled slowly, a shiver running through her words. "Then maybe this is ours for as long as it lasts." The room felt smaller, suddenly, the kind of small that happens when the truth finally fills it. Her eyes lingered on me, searching, and then she said it, quiet, steady, a line we both knew we couldn't step back from. "Stay tonight." The words hung there, dangerous and tender all at once. I didn't answer. I just took one step closer. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint pulse of rain starting again outside. We hadn't moved far from where we'd stood the night before. The same window, the same fragile distance pretending to protect us. She looked at me like she was already remembering something that hadn't happened yet. "I shouldn't have asked you to stay," she said finally. "Then tell me to go." She didn't. Instead, she walked past me, slow, as if testing the air between us. When she stopped, I could feel the warmth of her at my back, close enough that her breath brushed the edge of my neck. "I used to think I was done feeling things like this," she murmured. "That wanting someone could only end one way." I turned, and we were suddenly inches apart. Her eyes lifted to mine, hesitant but unflinching. And now I don't know if I'm terrified or alive. The confession landed like a heartbeat between us. My hand found her arm, light at first, then firmer when she didn't pull away. Her skin was cool, the air around us too thin. "Maybe both," I said. She exhaled shakily. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't." "No," she whispered. "It never is." Her voice wavered, but she didn't step back. I could feel the tremor in her fingers when she touched the edge of my jaw, a tentative gesture that felt like both surrender and warning. For a second, I thought she'd speak again, but instead she closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against mine. The smallest sound escaped her, not a sigh, not quite a sob, just breath caught between restraint and need. "I can't promise you anything," she said. "I'm not asking for anything." Her hand slid down to my chest, resting over my heart. "Then what do you want?" "To stop pretending this isn't real." We stood like that, every inch of space charged, every word slower than it should have been. I could see the reflection of the window light in her eyes, the flicker of someone still deciding if it was worth breaking something for a feeling. "Say it," I whispered. She looked at me, the faintest smile ghosting across her lips. "If I say it, I can't take it back." "Then don't." Her breath touched my mouth, one small movement away from closing the distance. The rain outside deepened, drumming softly against the glass. For one suspended moment, everything was still, her trembling hand, my unsteady pulse, the impossible pull between us. Then she whispered, barely audible, "We'll both regret this." "I know," but neither of us moved away. And in that breath, that single fragile second before the world could interrupt, we both understood exactly what it meant to be seen and what it would cost. Morning came slow. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the house wrapped in that kind of quiet that feels earned. I woke on the couch, half covered by a blanket that wasn't mine. The faint smell of her perfume lingered in the fabric, jasmine and something softer, something like sleep. She was already in the kitchen when I sat up. Coffee was brewing, her back turned to me. The early light painted the edge of her hair gold, the kind of detail you never notice until you realize you'll remember it forever. "You didn't leave," she said without turning. "You told me to stay." She let out a low, uncertain laugh. "I didn't think you would." I stood, stretching, unsure what to do with my hands. The night still hung between us, not a secret anymore, but not something that needed words either. She turned then, holding two mugs, one offered out toward me. Our fingers brushed as I took it, and the contact was quiet but full, like something fragile that had finally stopped running from itself. Neither of us said what now, but it was there, humming beneath everything. "I was afraid," she said after a moment, "of what people would think, of what I'd think." I nodded. "Me too." She smiled, small and real. "I keep waiting to feel wrong about this. And I just don't." Her voice cracked a little, and I saw the hint of tears she wasn't letting fall. I stepped closer, and this time she didn't pull back. My hand found hers, hesitant at first, then sure. She squeezed once like she was testing if I'd really stay. We stood there, side by side, the kind of silence that no longer felt heavy. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. I looked at her, the faint crease near her mouth, the steadiness in her eyes. "No, I think I regret not meeting you sooner." She laughed then, that low sound that first caught me weeks ago. It filled the kitchen, gentler now, easier. Outside, sunlight started breaking through the last of the gray. She leaned her head against my shoulder, the warmth of her body fitting easily against mine. I rested my chin lightly against her hair. "This doesn't have to be forever," she murmured. "I know, but it's something. It's real." Her hand tightened around mine, fingers interlacing, simple and certain. We stayed like that, two people who'd stopped pretending not to need each other, content to just breathe in the same space for a while. The bed frame, the rain, the rules we almost obeyed, all of it had led here. To a quiet kitchen, to her hand in mine, to the strange, ordinary grace of being seen and wanted without apology. She looked up once more, smiling through the stillness. "Strong enough, then?" I nodded, returning her smile. "Strong enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?"